God does not want you to get divorced. Have you experienced the consequences of divorce firsthand? Are you divorced? Are your parents divorced? Anyone in your family? Are there kids involved? Because the consequences of divorce affect more than just the two that were married. It affects everyone that is around them. God hates divorce, and it was never his intention for anybody to get divorced. God does not want you to get divorced. The consequences are numerable. Who knows the distraught it can bring into you or your loved one's life? It may lead to daddy issues, to mommy issues for the kids that are involved. It leads to adultery to the two that were married if they got divorced on non-biblical grounds. Stepdads, step-siblings, step relations enter the picture from divorce and remarriage. That was never God's intention. But fortunately for us, God can turn our mistakes into something beautiful. God can turn that divorce, He can turn that remarriage into something beautiful because that's just who He is, and we should praise His name. In 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14, it says, "Do not be unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship has righteousness with lawlessness? And what communion has light with darkness?" Whenever you're about to get married, if you're married right now, make sure you are equally yoked with your spouse. And if you're married right now, try to work on becoming equally yoked with your spouse. Do not marry an unbeliever. Do not marry someone unequally yoked as yourself. Marry someone equally yoked as you, meaning they're on their walk with Christ just as you are. They're holding the same pace just as you are. This way, you can both help each other. Just as Eve was meant for Adam as a helper, you and your spouse should help each other with each of your walks with Christ. Seek God's counsel for marriage. Pray about it. Allow the Lord to guide you through this very, very important life decision, and He will. You just have to let it. You need to submit to Him, surrender to Him, and watch Him work in your life. Now, grounds for divorce. Biblically speaking, the only ground for divorce is sexual immorality. Jesus tells this in Matthew 5:32 and Matthew 19:9. And then there's also another case Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 13 through 15. If you were married to an unbeliever and they walk out of the marriage, you're supposed to let them walk. But if you're married to an unbeliever and they stay in the marriage, it is your job to be the little bit of Jesus in their life. And you can't divorce them. If they're an unbeliever, they're not a Christian, you cannot divorce them unless they walk out on you. It is your job to sanctify them. And then there's the unique topic of abuse. If abuse is happening in a marriage, separation is needed. And as the separation is going on, you and your spouse need to try and reconcile. Because abuse is not grounds for divorce. So you need to actively try and work on reconciliation with your spouse. In the Old Testament, we have this topic talked about with Hagar, Ishmael, Abraham, and Sarah. So Sarah gave Hagar to Abraham to marry. Hagar bared Ishmael for Abraham. And then Sarah became abusive to Hagar. So the Lord told Abraham to divorce Hagar and that the Lord would take care of Hagar and Ishmael. So if abuse is happening, you need to try and reconcile. And after a certain amount of time, the Lord will give you that discernment. And then divorce can be validated through Him. But the Lord hates divorce. Do not use these excuses to get divorced. Go into marriage wanting to never get divorced, because God does not want you to get divorced because it affects yourself, your spouse, and so many other people. That was never His intention. Seek His guidance. God bless.